For most island states, tourism is the largest industry and the industry that is most susceptible to climate change. They harbor the same fears and have the same concerns as those of the Maldives. Climate change is no unfamiliar subject to the Maldives, which sits in the midst of the mighty Indian Ocean. 20 years ago, at the United Nations General Assembly, the Maldives warned world leaders about the growing threat to the planet by climate change and the associated rise in the mean sea levels. The 1,200 flat and tiny coral islands that comprise the Maldives lie just 2 meters above the mean sea level. The fear that the sea might swallow up the Maldives one day first occurred to it when tidal waves hit the country in 1987, causing widespread destruction to the tiny islands. 20 years later, today, the effects of climate change, sea level rise, and their associated impacts are realities not only for the Maldives, but for the entire planet. The vulnerability and the fragility of the tiny islands of the Maldives demand that we do utmost to sensitize governments, to sensitize international organizations, and to sensitize the civil society to act quickly and responsibly to halt and reverse the process of climate change. The Maldives was the first country in the world to sign the Kyoto Protocol, and one of the first countries in the world to ratify the protocol subsequently. At the national level, the Maldives has proceeded to identify strategies, policies, and projects to respond to impacts of climate change. Now, why did the Maldives assume such a leading role? What are the stakes for the Maldives? Well, for the Maldives, the sea is the greatest source of economic support. Of the Maldives' 90,000 square kilometer territory, 99% comprise the sea, and only 1% comprises land. Tourism and fisheries, they both lean heavily on the sea as well as the coral reefs. Yet today, the sea has become the greatest source of fear of the Maldivian people. And disturbing memories of the 2004 tragic tsunami still lingers in the minds of our people. Now, there are 193 inhabited islands in the Maldives and 89 resorts. Now, out of the 193 inhabited islands, 119 islands suffer from beach erosion. And that is to say, about 61% of all inhabited islands are experiencing the threat of beach erosion. While rising sea levels threaten inundation of the islands of the Maldives, rising ocean temperatures threaten the coral reef systems with bleaching. The El Nino of 1998 caused massive bleaching of the coral reefs. Survey reports reveal that recovery from the bleaching has been slow. Any damage to the coral reef system will adversely affect the tourism industry because 15% of tourist arrivals in the Maldives are for scuba diving. Climate change threatens not only the economic base of small islands, but also their very existence and survival. If there is any escape in the short run from the threats of climate change, it lies in adaptation. And the best and safest option for those at immediate risk, such as the Maldives and the small island states, surely adoption of adaptation is the best. The Maldives has identified the most urgent and immediate adaptation needs to address the impacts of climate change. There was extensive public consultation between and among relevant government agencies and with the civil society in the formulation of this National Adaptation Program for Action, NAPA. The Maldives NAPA has identified the following as priority adaptation needs. 1, protection of the critical infrastructure. 2, protection of human settlements. 3, increasing the resilience of the coral reef system. 4, protection of tourism infrastructure. 5, strengthening the capacity of health services. 6, acquisition of appropriate technologies and tools for water resources management. 7, increasing the resilience of the fisheries industry. And 8, increasing food security and agricultural production.